If you guys, Lee Witt has a book that was published and it's on Amazon. So I sent you an email with a link on it.
Oh, I didn't see that one. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was Sunday night.
It's about a polar bear. I got it on my copy here. So
Oh, can you open, show me one of the pictures.
Amazon said it was sold out.
Yeah, we're not.
well, they were in print.
It's pre-purchase.
Oh, okay.
It's pre-purchase right now.
Oh, man.
But it's a story based
Yeah,
on
so
her
it's
pictures.
all-
Right?
Optic picture.
Diana, that was your husband voice.
My boy,
Oh, congratulations,
Your
Lee Wen.
Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah.
I
Your
think I made
husband
you last
voice.
time, right? So finally out.
that's such a great idea.
Yeah.
The problem is I still have to look at all my pictures and come up with a story, which I'm not creative, so.
Okay, so
All you have to do is type in Luann book. Comes right up. Sorry, Jim.
no problem.
Oh.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get around to this for a while. I was supposed to have done it a while ago and had some issues, and then actually everything you're going to see tonight, I didn't even look at until yesterday, and I filmed it in January.
Oh, wow.
Because I was afraid to look at it, to be honest with you, because I did it literally just a couple days after getting out of the hospital. Been in the hospital for a week, had multiple surgeries, complications, and a couple days after getting home, I was like, oh, I need to do this. And I was all jacked up on medications and everything else, and went out to a park to do it, and it got really cold. And I was like, oh man, I want to be done with this. And everything you're going to see was done in one take. There were no
Okay.
retakes, no nothing. I just did it all in one take, and then wanted to get out of the cold. And I looked at it yesterday. I was like, okay, it's not the total train wreck that I thought it was. So I put a presentation together, and what I did is I put in stop points where it'll just be a section, and then I'll stop the video for questions and discussion about whatever was in that part of the video. This is all about, once you got your camera settings, how to actually use your camera and shoot. Different techniques, different types of shots, different ways to actually use the camera to record different video clips. So that's what it's going to be about. I did at one point, there's a note, I forgot to actually, I was in manual focus and I forgot to focus the camera on the subject, but the clip still shows what the technique does, even though the flower is way out of focus. And,
Does that mean we need to get drugs?
yeah, I was on a lot of medications and was freezing cold and just wanted and didn't review anything, and I just shot it and went home. And I never looked at anything until yesterday and put this together. So any quick questions or anything before I go ahead and start it, and then afterwards too, we'll have any discussion that you want to have.
Will you
drugs
have
should we buy?
you give us the link when you send this recording? Make sure to include the link to the first one with all the settings for those
Oh,
that
okay.
may not have been at that class.
Yeah, and I did update the notes and stuff associated with that. I ended up working then too with some people who have Sony cameras and discovered, well, Sony doesn't like to use any of the industry standard terms for anything. And in a Sony camera, they have their whole alphabet soup of their names for things and what they do in their cameras. And so there may be some other ones that do it too. Sony may not be the only brand, but they give a name to something that's a bundle of settings. So all those different settings that I was telling you about that you can pick and choose and do this. Well, Sony bundles groups of settings together, saying, oh, well, you probably want to group all these settings together. You probably want to group all these settings together. And then they have their own Sony proprietary names for these groupings. So you get in a Sony camera and you don't really find anything that are all these settings because they're grouped in the menu under something that's a Sony proprietary name that you have to go in your manual and learn, oh, well, this name means it's all of these settings grouped together. So that's, and I updated some notes about that in the notes associated with that presentation that are online that there's a link to. So the very first thing in this is I'm just going to talk about, hey, how I set the camera up to get ready to shoot, and then I show some shots. So if you remember from the original settings, the ideal setting, which you don't have to get too hung up, I'm going to tell you right now, don't get too hung up on it. But if you've got the stuff to do it, the ideal setting is to have a shutter speed that's double the frame rate. So I like to shoot almost everything I do at 30 frames per second, 30 FPS, we call it in video, which means I want a shutter speed of 1/60th of a second. So I was out there in bright afternoon sun and wanted to shoot at f4, and the lowest native video ISO. Remember, when you're in video, your camera ISOs, your lowest ISO you can use in video is always much higher than the lowest ISO you can use for still pictures. A lot of people don't realize that. You have a minimum ISO in video that's higher than the minimum ISO. Like my camera has a minimum ISO of 125, but the minimum video ISO the camera will do is 320. And that's normal on any of your cameras. So I'm out there at 320 and f4, and I dial up a 30th of a second. I mean, I want to dial up a 60th of a second because I'm at 30 FPS. No way in heck in the afternoon sun are you going to get that at f4 and a 60th of a second. So there's a neutral density filter on there. And that's what I explained is put on a variable neutral density filter. Videographers live with variable neutral density filters if they want to stick to that rule, because then that's, you set your ISO, you set your f-stop, you set your shutter speed manually, and it won't get you to the shutter speed you want. So you have one more item on top of what you normally deal with as a photographer, and that's your neutral density filter that you rotate until you see your shutter speed get to where you want. So we'll just see that real quick and go from there. I'm going to get the video started and just make sure everybody can see that, and I'll stop that before I move to the next clip. So I'm going to launch that.
If this goes all over my head, can I use my phone?
Yep, absolutely. Because a lot of these shots that you'll see, most of this video is about just how to shoot different types of shots, and you can do all of them with your phone.
Okay, good.
In fact, I even show something related to a phone in here. All right, I'm going to play the first segment and make sure everybody can see it. Okay, so I'm out here today to demonstrate some stuff for you with the mirrorless camera and some techniques for actually shooting video with the camera. What I've done with the camera, I've put it in my basic video mode, and I've got some settings dialed in. What I did, I went to the lowest native ISO that I could go with this camera for the video settings I'm using, which is ISO 320. And I want to shoot wide open with this particular lens is f4 to give me a little bit of a soft background on some of the close-up stuff that I want to have. And that means that I would really like to have a shutter speed of 1/60th of a second, but it's too bright out here today to do that without a neutral density filter. So I have a 10-stop variable neutral density filter on here, and I have dialed myself into aperture priority for the video mode. I'm at f4, ISO 320, and I simply rotate my ND filter until I see my shutter speed is a 60th of a second, and then I'm good to go. So could everybody see and hear that okay?
Yep.
Got your sound adjusted. Okay, any questions on that before I actually start showing you different shots?
Well, you said it was a 10-stop neutral density, but then you said you twisted it, so it must have been an adjustable density.
It is a variable 10-stop neutral density filter.
That camera doesn't go below 320 ISO on video?
Most cameras will not go below 320 ISO for video. That's normal. That's the normal bottom end range for video. It has to do with the dynamic range processing for video, and with some of the, when you pick some of the settings, depending on what settings you want that affect dynamic range, sometimes you won't even be able to go that low with your ISO. Various video settings in your camera will restrict your ISO. Sometimes you'll be limited to 640 or 800 will be your minimum ISO, depending on some of the settings that you choose when you do video.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's one of the points that I wanted to make is in still photography mode, you may be able to have an ISO of 160, 125, 100 or whatever, but you won't get that low in video. Your base video ISO is always going to be at a higher number, and what that higher number is going to vary depending on the combination of settings that you've chosen for the video quality that you want to do, what codecs you're using, et cetera, whether you're shooting log video or non-log video. So, all right, I'll give you the first section here. Well, hopefully it doesn't make me start it over every time. This is, yeah, apparently it wants to start it over each time. So I'm going to, at least I put gaps in it so I can find where to stop. There. Good thing I put 3 seconds of black video in between every segment. To demonstrate a few handheld camera movements, I'm going to use these Carolina jessamine flowers that happen to be in bloom here and will work nicely for what we're going to do. One thing I'm going to tell you that's useful to know is don't get too hung up with looking at the screen or getting your eye to the eyepiece. That's actually going to kind of trip you up. That's going to make you unstable and less smooth with everything you're doing. If you can shoot a little wide and know that you have your subject framed up, you can adjust some of your framing afterwards. It's actually better to keep your eyes on the subject itself and just trust with a little practice that your camera is actually going where you want with the subject. Because in video, smoothness really counts, and that helps with your smoothness. So I'm going to show you right now a couple options for doing one of the most basic video shots, which is a push-in shot. Are you guys able to hear me while I keep this where it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Then I can just keep it here. So yeah, basically what I'm going to show you is a push-in shot. And the reverse of that is a pull-out shot. Push in, pull out. And in video, the nice thing is, if you're doing a push-in shot of something static that doesn't have like people walking or something like that, you can just do a push-in, which is easier than pulling the camera out, and then just play the video backwards. When you put your final production together, you just reverse the clip. But if you've got people walking or whatever, it's in a clip where you do a push-in, you can't reverse it because then people will be walking backwards in your clip. You actually have to do a legitimate pull-out with the camera. But push in and pull out are two of the most basic video camera moves. Videographers that consider themselves to be cinematographers will call that a dolly in and a dolly out, as opposed to a push in or a pull out. And I'll show you what I do here.
Can you do that with a?
If you push,
Oop. Go ahead, I'm listening.
No, can you do all of this with a tripod, Jim?
You can't do a push in or a pull out with a tripod.
Okay.
Yep. So I'm showing handheld on here. And one of the things you'll notice what I do with the camera is I'll kind of wrap my hand around and underneath. It kind of helps with your stability and smoothness if you kind of cup the camera from underneath, that you impart a little less camera shake into it. Because once you hit the record button, you don't have to hold it the same way you do for a still camera. Once you hit the record button, you can cup your hands underneath it and just cradle it in your hands. And that gives you a little more smoothness, which is what you're trying to do. You're trying to take as much of that handheld jitter, out of the clip that you're filming. And another thing that's okay is, and what you want to do is hit the record button actually 1 or 2 seconds at least, before you actually, get the camera moving and where you want it to go. And after the fact too. Don't think you have to immediately push the button to get exactly what you want and then stop recording when you don't want. In the world of video, when you are putting clips together, you actually want excess footage on either side of what you're actually going to present. In the world of video, that excess footage on either side of what you really want is called handles. And the reason it's good to have it there is in video, you put transitions on clips where one clip will fade into another, it will fade out, the next one will fade in, you have crossfades and stuff. Those transitions will not work unless you have that extra footage called handles on either side of what you're actually presenting. So when you're putting stuff together, you see the actual intended piece of the clip. And if you're fading it in and fading it out, cross-fading it with another clip, you have to have excess footage, or your actual intended footage that you intend to show the audience winds up being part of the fade, and you don't want that. You want a little extra on either side. So don't ever be afraid to have any amount of excess footage in front of or in back of what you're shooting. Don't be afraid to push the button and roll for a couple seconds before you actually do something, and then when you're done, let it roll for a couple seconds before you stop recording. If you push in and out with your elbows, you do get some instability and some handshake that can happen with that you're going to have to adjust later. A videography trick that some people do, because you really don't need long sequences for something like this that might be B-roll. You might just need 2-3 seconds of something before you transition to something else. And as long as you can get that really smooth, you're good. So one of the techniques is to actually brace your elbows against your body to be stable, and then virtually let yourself forward all the way to the point where you just have to, break and catch your balance. But just letting your body naturally fall forward while you've got the camera locked in a stable position can give you a much better push-in shot for something like this. So I'll do it a couple times here. And one more time. So as long as I have a couple seconds of something really smooth there, that's going to work. So here, and you'll see my note, that's where I was talking so much to the recording camera that I forgot to actually focus the camera on the flower. Another shot. I'll back that up and let you see it a couple times here.
What does B-roll mean?
All right, I'll tell you that in a minute. That's a good question. But yeah, you saw how smooth it actually was. Basically, all I'm doing is locking my elbows against my body and just letting myself fall. And at the last minute, just stepping my leg out to catch myself from actually falling. But that's a technique for something like that is the virtual fall for a push-in. And then you can reverse that. You can simply reverse that footage to go out. And when I say I was talking too much to the camera to remember to, focus on that flower before doing a push-in shot. But
so, Jim, if you're focusing and you're moving forward, would you have it on continuous focus?
Yes, you'd put it on continuous focus, get it locked to begin with and have it on continuous focus, as you do that, which I did not. I was too busy talking to remember to do that in that instance. Normally, you'd be paying attention to what you're doing and you would remember to do it, but you're exactly right, Kathy. That's exactly what you do. You put it on continuous, let it catch focus before you start the movement.
On your continuous focus, I know you have the XH2S. Do you have it on flowers or do you objects, or what do you have it on? Do you have identification?
If I had been, I have the XH2, and had I been doing that at that time, I simply would have been on continuous and actually on single point, with the single point, and locked it, and gotten the green box to light up before doing that.
Okay. Thanks.
So,
And the other thing, and I'll get to your question in a second, Brian, and the other thing I made a point of earlier in this, and this is a point for just about any time you're shooting with your camera, you trying to be smooth handheld actually becomes difficult if while you're actually rolling footage, doing movements and doing things, if you're trying to look through the eyepiece or actually look at the viewfinder and you're trying to keep something framed in the viewfinder or whatever, you actually will find that you will be much smoother by not trying to concentrate on the eyepiece or the view screen on the back of the camera and looking at what's being recorded. Just go back and look at it and see if you need to make another take. You're much better off actually looking over the camera with your eyes at what you're shooting, especially if you're walking, making body movements, arm movements with your camera or whatever. You're going to be much more stable with your camera movements if you're not trying to look with your eyes at the camera. It's a much better technique to look at your subject with your eyes, and with a little practice, and like I say, shoot a little wide, because you can crop in post-production. Shoot a little wide and keep something in your frame that way. Does that make sense?
yes.
Okay. And Brian, in the world of video, you have two types of footage, A-roll and B-roll. A-roll is the meat of your story, what you're trying to tell. B-roll is kind of background and fluff and, gives a little context to what's going on. Think of any TV show or movie that you watch or something, before you see the characters, like having a conversation in an outdoor cafe or something, you'll see shots of the city and a sunset and mountains in the background, and then some traffic going by, and then all of a sudden, here's the characters at the cafe at the table, and they're talking with each other. All that stuff that was leading up to that, the sunset, the traffic, the skyline, the city, whatever, that's called B-roll. So all that stuff that just shows like basic surroundings, sets the scene, things like that, that's B-roll. The actual gist of the story is A-roll. Does that answer your question, Brian?
Yeah, so like in The Sound of Music at the beginning, the mountains are the B-roll, and then when Julie Andrews starts singing, that's A-roll.
That's exactly correct. You got it. Yep, you may see the sweeping vista, and everything, and then you see the character. The sweeping vista is, and you see time lapse is used a lot. You see time lapse, used in B-roll, especially on nature programs and things like that. National Geographic, the Animal Planet, all this stuff. You'll see the desert or the African plains, and you'll see that time lapse of the sunset or the sunrise and the clouds streaming across the sky, and then all of a sudden they start talking about the animal and showing the animal. Yeah, that's B-roll. Other shot that you want to do is panning, and again, same thing. Holding the camera out with your arms and trying to do something like that is actually not stable. What you really want to do with the camera, you'll see people do that, is elbows locked in again. And see how I'm cupping the camera in my hands? Hold the camera in a stable position.
Yeah.
Record. And then just do a sideways motion using a lot of hip action while keeping your elbows locked. Now see how smooth the camera is moving versus if you try and swing with your elbows? So that's a nice way to get a smooth pan if you're hand holding the camera.
Look like you're doing Tai Chi.
Yeah, But yeah, for a short pan like that, handheld, that's what you cup the camera in your hands, hit the record button, and it's mostly hip action. Lock your elbows against the body, it's hip action. That's going to give you that smoothness, that smooth flow to the video. Any questions on that?
So we need to work out before we start our video and get our legs and bodies in shape.
Oh yeah, trust me, I can tell you, shooting video without stretching and doing things first hurts, because you know
That's why
there's
you take the drugs.
there's another thing you're going to see later, that that if you use anything on a gimbal, you have to learn how to do it, and it's what really gets you when you do a lot of that. But you'll see that later in the video.
Okay.
All right, I'm rolling video again here. Okay, beyond hand holding for stability, the first option you're probably going to want to consider is a tripod. It's a great option for video stability. They actually have video heads. They're a little bit different than camera heads. They're typically what's called a fluid head. One of the things that gives away the fact that it's a video head when you see it is they will have a handle here to help you control the tripod head and be more maneuverable. A fluid head, the mechanisms are damped so that when you make motions with it, the motions have resistance to you, and therefore they're very smooth motions when you do it. They typically will pan or tilt in a very smooth motion. Any questions about that? It's a special head that you can pull your regular head off the tripod. In fact, I use my fluid head for regular photography all the time because it's a great stable head, just for shooting. It's a pan and tilt head, but it has friction damped mechanisms and that extra handle on it so that you're not actually putting your hand on the camera and imparting handshake onto the camera, the tripod. That handle keeps your hand so far out that you can be very gentle with pushing that handle up, down, left, right, or even a combination of both pan and tilt at the same time. So does anybody have a fluid head or have any questions about a fluid head?
Is it like you can use any brand, or what's a recommended brand?
Oh, there's a million of them out there. All the, in fact, all the normal brands that make still camera heads also typically make video fluid heads as well. So all the name brands that you can usually shop, and get a fluid head as well. And you can just unscrew your still camera head and put the fluid head on it. And I on my big solid tripod, I just keep the fluid head on it all the time. And when I want real extra stability in what I'm doing with the camera, like for time lapse or other things, I put my camera on that, because the fluid head also locks. Besides being able to move it, it has adjustable friction for how much tension it has when you move it, but you can also just lock it down in place and leave your camera on it. In fact, that is, now that I mentioned it, I didn't even show it in this video. The most basic video shot that there is in the world is called a lockdown shot, which is you stick the camera on the tripod, you lock the head down so that it doesn't move, and roll the camera. That's done for interviews. You see interviews with people that that nothing is moving. The person's just talking to the camera, a talking head, to the camera. That's what they call a lockdown shot. So
That's what you did when you shot this video.
Believe it or not, no. I had somebody hand holding a camera, and all the filming of me is handheld.
Wow.
Yep, nothing of me was done on a tripod. It was all I had a helper shooting me handheld with another video camera.
Steady person.
Actually, it's a very steady camera. I'll show it to you later. All right, I'm rolling. now that I've got the camera locked on a tripod for stability, and it's on a fluid head that rotates, pans, and tilts very smoothly, I'm going to show you another classic video shot that you can do. This is called a reveal shot. You start out with the camera pointed at something kind of dull and boring, and then through your camera motion, you reveal what's actually interesting and going on in your scene. So I'm pointed just right into these trees and shrubbery right here, but you see I'm very smoothly pushing, rotating the camera around, bringing it around, and as the camera comes around, this beautiful blue pond full of lily pads in the afternoon with reflections on it is now revealed. So yeah, that's a classic thing that's done a lot, is a reveal shot. You point the camera at just something, something that has nothing to do with what the scene is, and pan it past it, move it past it, rotate it past it, up, down, left, right, whatever. And sometimes the reverse is done for a transition to another scene. You'll be filming what you really want. For instance, that pond, you would reverse that footage and go into the shrubbery. And as your footage, if that's playing backwards, goes into the shrubbery, at that point, that's where you initiate your transition and transition to something else where it might be somewhere else in the woods or whatever. And then you do the opposite. You come out of like shooting right into a tree trunk or something and then reveal the path in the woods or something like that. So a lot of times in video, that's how a scene will be transitioned. You'll have the actual subject in the scene, then the camera will move into something like a tree trunk or shrubbery or just something like that. And that's where it also does the fade then. And then as it fades in, it's from another tree trunk or more shrubbery. And then the camera moves into what the next scene is. I'm sure you without thinking about it, it doesn't register in your mind, but you've seen that a million times on TV shows and movies and stuff. It's called a reveal shot. Any questions about that? All right.
Oh, boy.
This is the next step up from a tripod. The next big step up from a tripod, if you have the budget for stability, is a 3-axis gimbal. And that's what I'm putting together right now. They require an investment in money, and they require an investment in getting over the learning curve for putting them together and balancing your rig. Right now, it is very unbalanced, and you have to balance 3 separate systems before you're ready to roll with your camera. And that's what I'm going to do now.
Speedy Jim.
Yeah, it's 5x actual speed because you can see what a process this is to balance a DSLR or a mirrorless camera on a 3-axis gimbal.
Definitely not in my pay grade.
It's hard enough to get it on a regular gimbal, like for bird photography.
Yeah.
That's in one direction.
There, it's done. So this is for the highest quality, best looking footage. That thing is the best. Absolutely, hands down, it's what you want to get. But costs a lot of money and it has a learning curve. And you can see anytime you change, even if you change a lens, it's off balance and you have to do that again. So simply changing a lens causes you to do that. You have to do that procedure again because there's 3 magnetic induction motors in there that move 3 different arms. And if it's unbalanced, those motors have to work so hard, they get so hot that it can burn out the motors. in the gimbal if it's trying to strain to work it with an unbalanced load. I actually screwed up one time with that. I thought I had ruined it. I was on a shoot for a client and I had the camera on it and everything was balanced. I took the camera off of it without turning it off and walked away, turned around, didn't even look at it, didn't even know that it was turned on with no load on it. So it was completely unbalanced. And the thing wound up sitting there jittering and shaking and trying to balance itself with nothing to balance for about a half an hour while I was doing another shot in another room. And I came back in and saw that thing, shivering like a naked person in the snow. And I was like, oh my God. And as I reached my hand to it, I could feel the heat radiating off of it. And I was like, oh my God, I've cooked the motors. It's ruined. They had a refrigerator. I stuck it in the refrigerator for 20 minutes after I turned it off. And it turned out to be okay. But you could have fried an egg on those motors when I got back to it.
Would a zoom lens change the geometry of that and throw it off?
Yes, yep. So so what you do if you put a zoom lens on, you put the zoom lens at mid travel and balance it there so that you're straining the motors the least amount when you zoom out or pull back, you balance it with the zoom lens in the middle, because then wherever you actually do put the zoom lens, it is unbalanced and you are working the motors harder, but you're doing the least amount of working the motors harder. If you balance it with the zoom all the way retracted and then keep zooming out for shots, then you're putting, extra strain on the motors because it's extra unbalanced at that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And they are less expensive for lighter cameras and they're more expensive for heavier cameras. It's the heavier payload you want to put in it, the more expensive the gimbal gets. The nice thing is they have come down in price, over the years. They are better and not as expensive as they used to be, but that still is an investment, if you're serious. But it is the next step up from a tripod. It has tripod feet on it too. You can put it down, and let the camera sit on it and be like a tripod. It has a joystick on it, so once you set it down, you can use the joystick and pan. You can pan, tilt, rotate, and move. You can move it in 3 axes with the joystick to get a very precise position, just like using a nice head on a tripod.
I was watching a golf tournament this past weekend, and they were going into a playoff, and the players were taking a cart, and the video guy had a gimbal, and he was running with it next to the cart, and the picture from it was pretty stable. He was running.
There is a trick to how you run or even walk, and I'm gonna show you that later, because this is not the only kind of gimbal that you can have, and I'll show those later as well. There are some other inexpensive options that I'm going to show you later. But this is, if you have this, if you have a fantastic, mirrorless or DSLR, you got a Nikon, Z9, you have a real nice, Sony, the Fuji XH series, any of these cameras, the nice Canon R series. If you've got any of those that you invested in for video, then this is what you want to put that camera on to get the best out of it. All right, I'm rolling again. Okay, this camera is now stabilized on this gimbal. You can see. So I move this around.
Oh, cool.
How smooth that camera moves and stays level. If need be, there is a joystick on them that will also let you very smoothly pan and tilt. This is much smoother than even using a fluid head on a tripod for these motions. Now, if you invest in one of these, typically they do not come with these additional arms. You just get this piece. These additional arms that I put on here are more money that you spend to make it a little more comfortable to work with. So, yeah, I'll let it roll because that explains that. Now you're going to start seeing me use it. So now I have a balanced camera on an operating gimbal. It's going to help make things nice and smooth. Like I say, if you don't have the additional arms, you just have the one handle, but if you add the additional tripod grip to it, you can get it with two hands. Now, one thing that's going to help with stability is to actually hold this at an angle. You'll see the camera still levels out. It's actually a little more difficult to try and hold it vertically while you move around than it is to let it be at a little natural angle like this, again, with your elbows tucked against your body for stability. The other thing that helps is you still will have this up-down motion as you walk, unless you help smooth out your walk. The more you can smooth out your walk, the more things are smoothed out in the gimbal, and it becomes easier to smooth that out in post-production if you want. Videographers use what they call a ninja walk, which is basically land on your heels, rock to your toes, land on your heel, rock to your toe, land on your heel, rock to your toe in a slight crouching position. And this helps keep the camera level. Now, if you have these additional grip handles, this becomes much more stable. You can even open up the tripod foot, brace that against your waist, get these handles as a grip. I'm going to actually put it a little higher and then do that ninja walk. Yeah, so if you saw that, you notice I'm not looking at the camera at all. I'm looking over the camera at where I'm going. And especially in an environment like that or whatever, you want to do that. You're looking at the camera, you're looking at the screen to try and keep things stable and try and keep things framed. You're going to trip, you're going to fall, you're going to drop that camera, you're going to break that rig, you're going to stumble and ruin your footage and have to go back and do it again. That's one thing I'm going to, kind of pound in your head is don't look at the camera when you're filming. Look where you're going, especially if you're moving your body. Just watch the subject, watch where you're going, and just think about being smooth in your movements. The more you look at the camera, the worse your footage looks, the more shake you put into it. And that's a big beginner mistake, is everybody wants to look in the camera, look at the screen on the back, watch what's being framed, and you get all this shaky, unstable footage.
So you can count on adjusting the framing in editing then?
Yes, as I say, as you get more practice at it, you get better, but you want to start out by shooting wide, and cropping in later. Yes, you can absolutely crop your footage later. Just like with your with your camera, when you shoot stills, you can crop. There's a limit on how far you can crop without it getting pixelated. That's a question we can address later if you want to address that after this. But yes, you can crop. So, any other questions on that?
Jim, as you're walking along the trail in your example there, if you wanted to pan upwards toward the sky, is that when you use the joystick, or do you
Exactly. If you wanted to,
because the camera is going to stay level with your trail, right?
Exactly. Like I say, you saw I spread out the tripod foot and put two of the three legs of the tripod foot against my body, and held it, yeah, like I say, somewhere around a 30 to 45 degree angle out from your body is actually very natural and very comfortable to hold it. Trying to hold one of those things straight up and down, like a staff, is very hard to do. It's much more natural and relaxed to have it out at the angle. The camera's still going to point level. And then in that case, as you walk, if you want the camera to tilt up or tilt down as you're doing, and that was a push-in shot, and if you reverse the footage, it's a pull-out shot. But if you also want to tilt, yes, you use the joystick to make the camera tilt up, down. You can even have the camera pan left or right while you're doing that too. The great thing about the 3-axis gimbal is the camera will still stay level even if you do panning left and right, tilting up and down, or even a combination. If you move like left and up or right and down with the joystick, if you push the joystick diagonally, the gimbal still keeps the camera level with the horizon, which is which is beautiful. So you can combine those movements. You can walk with the camera and also drive the joystick at the same time. Takes a little practice, but absolutely you can do that.
Thank you.
So, any other questions on that? All right. Now I want you to know those gimbals for DSLRs, mirrorless cameras are expensive and they are a pain to work with. They do provide really great results if you're looking for real professional quality. For a lot of things that you might want to produce, you can use your cell phone. They've got gimbals for cell phones and action cameras. You can get a GoPro, an action camera, and a stabilized gimbal for it, all for much less than the price of an actual gimbal that's a high quality gimbal for a mirrorless or a DSLR camera. Yeah, so what I was trying to explain there is you can buy the camera and the gimbal for one of these for less money than what just the gimbal costs for the big camera. So those two gimbals that you see in my hand, the one for the phone and the one for the GoPro, are $99 a piece.
Oh, wow.
And the GoPro in that gimbal was a $300 GoPro. So there's $400 there versus $1,400 I paid for that gimbal you were seeing. So so just this, just that GoPro and that gimbal in my hand, which does fantastic work, is the whole rig, camera and gimbal and all, was $1,000 less than just the gimbal I have for the big camera.
And that's the one that I bought, right?
Yeah, it's similar. The DJI gimbal is like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's different brands. There's all different brands that you can get for these. And like I say, you can see as I'm moving around with these that GoPro, an action camera. See how I'm moving the gimbal around, but notice how the camera's staying level. All for much less than the price of an actual gimbal that's a high quality gimbal for a mirrorless or a DSLR camera. Your cell phones make some very nice video. This gives you the option of working with that. The nice thing about these is they're pre-balanced for the load. You just put your GoPro into the gimbal, you just put your cell phone into the gimbal, turn it on, and it's ready to go. None of that rigmarole of all that balancing act that I had to do with the other gimbal to make these work.
So they'd be too heavy. I mean, like a Z9 or a Z8 would be too heavy for those single hand gimbals.
Most likely, yes. And these are specifically made. The one with the GoPro in it is specifically made for the GoPro. It's already pre-balanced for a GoPro. The one for the cell phone is already pre-balanced for a cell phone. So all that balancing stuff you saw me do with the other one, because the other one is universal. You stick any DSLR or mirrorless camera and any lens combination on it, and you're good, and you have to balance it. The phone one is balanced for the weight of a cell phone. The GoPro one is balanced for the weight of a GoPro. You don't have to do any balancing. You just clamp the phone in, clamp the GoPro in, turn the gimbal on, and start recording video. They're wonderful. They're a great starter tool. They're a great beginner's tool because, like I say, for an investment of about $100, and you already have a cell phone, you can use your cell phone and have great stabilized footage. I do plenty of B-roll with my cell phone on that $99 gimbal, and I do a lot of work with the GoPro cameras on the gimbal. I have 3 GoPro cameras now that I do a lot of video work with. And the other thing with the gimbals too, you notice as I was working with all of these, I had them, they were all in a mode where the camera is staying level with the horizon. There's, even if you can tilt up, down, left, right, and the camera stays level with the horizon. Every gimbal has modes that you can unlock that if you want and put the camera in a different orientation than level with the horizon, but the gimbal will still keep it smooth. And they have a mode where it's called POV, where if you're doing motions, it will actually follow your motions, but still be smooth. If you want to impart that like flying look as you're moving, and you want the camera to actually tilt down a little to the left, then come back up level and tilt down a little to the right. Imagine like you're flying in an airplane and you're banking left, banking right, and you want to emulate that footage. In the normal mode, the gimbal won't let you do that because the gimbal keeps it locked level with the horizon. But the gimbal also has a mode where you can do that, but it will make those motions very smooth and fluid, just as if you were filming like in an airplane or something like that. If you want to do things for special effects where you make it look like that, where the camera banks left, banks right, comes back up level again, and the movements are very smooth. There's nothing jerky about it. That's another thing with the gimbal. Trying to do that stuff handheld always comes out jerky and jittery.
So you could do a drone taking off from the ground and going up above your head.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And see, that's another thing about a drone. A drone is a fantastic video tool. I have a couple drones that I use too. And these 3-axis gimbals that you're seeing here, the camera in a drone is locked into a 3-axis gimbal. And that's why drone footage is so smooth, because it's also a 3-axis gimbal, and your controller also has a joystick, so you can tilt the camera, up, down, and you can rotate the drone left, right, spin, whatever. And so your drone is a flying 3-axis gimbal camera. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But yeah, if for smooth footage, nothing beats, for motion, like I say, for shots where you don't have to move the camera to a different position, you just want to rotate, pan, tilt, or be locked down. The tripod is great, but you actually need to move around and move through scenes and do a lot of motion. Gimbals are what you want. And let's say, also, by the way, the price on the gimbal that I have, one of the reasons it's priced that much is because of the payload capacity on it. It does have heavier duty motors on it, which is probably what saved me that time I cooked them when I took the camera off of it. You can spend less money on those and get them that have a lighter payload. So if you're not going to put heavy lenses, if you're just going to put short lenses on an average mirrorless camera, there are step down versions of these that hold a lighter payload. The one I got in the brand that I own, that's a DJI. DJI is the company that makes the gimbal. At the time I bought that gimbal, it was their maximum payload gimbal. That will hold a payload of almost 10 pounds on the head. So you want to look at the weight of your camera and the weight of the longest lens you want to use, and then look at the payload rating on a gimbal that you want to buy. And also, let's say that I don't have anything that actually maxes out anywhere near 10 pounds that I put on it. The max payload that I ever put on it is about 6 pounds. So I'm well within the payload. And that means I'm not working the motors at their limit. If I got one that had a 6 pound payload capacity, I would be working the motors at their limit and actually straining the motors all the time with the payload I put on it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a much less expensive gimbal to have a lower payload rating on it, but if you add it up and say, oh yeah, my payload is that, you just realize, yeah, you're straining your motors and running them hot and wearing your battery down faster and just putting a lot more wear and tear on your gimbal if you don't buy one that actually has some headroom on the payload capacity. That's the other thing too. If you're buying a cell phone gimbal, if you've got one of the flagship phones, they are heavier than the payload rating of a lot of the inexpensive phone gimbals. You can get phone gimbals for, $50, $69 or whatever, but they're not for the flagship phones that weigh 250 grams. You have to check if you have, a Samsung Galaxy Ultra or, an iPhone 15, plus whatever, if you've got any of those phones, your phone itself, you have to get, one of the better quality, higher end phone gimbals that you want to check the weight of your phone and check the payload capacity of the gimbal. And you usually they won't accept the phone with a case around it. Typically have to take the case off your phone to get it to fit in them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. What I've got now to show you, this is a slider track. They come in different lengths. Basically what they are is a tripod head on a track so that you can get smooth, fluid motion for your camera shots. You can place them on the ground, on tables. They have access points on the ends where you can put tripods on both ends. There's points in the middle where you can put a tripod in the middle if you want to do that. You can hold them level yourself like this. You can do interesting angle shots like this. And I'm just going to show you a nice panning shot with this flower. Now, one thing that helps when you're doing things like this is you might not necessarily be smooth with your tracking speed across the track. And it's very hard actually to do it slow if you want a shot that looks slow. It's actually very nice when you're on a track to put it in slow motion or ultra slow motion mode and then just move it very quickly like this. You're going to be much more smooth if you do it quickly and then have it replayed as slow motion. I am actually in ultra slow motion mode, and I'm going to make some passes of this flower with the camera, just holding the track somewhat level. And the fact that I'm in ultra slow motion mode should make this play back very nicely.
Is that what you're using to make that?
I'll show you. So I did that in 8x slow motion, so this is only one pass of the slide.
Mm.
But you see what that looks like. You see how smooth it is when it plays back.
The track might not be holding the track.
Yeah, I'll let you
Should
see
make
it
this
again.
play back very nicely.
And when you're doing something like this, you saw I did like half a dozen passes. Never be afraid on any shot to repeat it over and over and over, and then just go back in the end and take the best take, because you may have one.
So what I'm going to show you guys now
You may have one
is
little
what's called
jitter.
a parallax.
One little jitter or one little stutter, something while you're doing that may mess up one take that you may not see at the time. In this case, like I say, you saw I was just pushing that thing back and forth half a dozen times, because when you're on a slider, and even when you're doing panning shots and stuff like that, it's very difficult to maintain a constant speed through the whole thing. You end up pushing a camera on the slider, and that slider, by the way, holds any of my cameras, even my big, the big the big XH2 with the big lens. It just has a ball head on it, and you can put any camera you want on the ball head. I had a GoPro on there for this, because this GoPro has a nice 8x ultra slow motion mode, which I used here. But it's, like I say, it's very difficult to maintain a smooth panning speed throughout the whole length of it. Typically you slow down, speed up, slow down, speed up, and you get variations in speed. If you move very quickly, then you typically, because you're moving quickly, don't change your rate of speed. You don't slow down or speed up very much if you move quickly. So for shots like this, your technique is actually do it quickly, but do it at a high frame rate and then slow the frame rate down. So this was shot at 240 frames per second, and then it's being played back at 30 frames per second. So while I was doing those, fast passes, the camera was recording 240 frames a second, and then it's just played back for you to see it at 30 frames a second. For me to actually just put the camera at 30 frames a second and try and move this somewhat level, you'll see. Let's do that. And the fact that I'm in ultra slow motion mode should make this play back very nicely. To try and push your hand this slowly and push a camera this slowly and stay smooth and stay at a constant rate of speed is damn near impossible. Pushing that camera across the track for that length of time and trying to maintain that speed, you're just not going to do it. That is also why, if you want to invest the money, they sell motorized tracks and motorized sliders, and then you adjust the speed of the motor, and then you turn it on, and the motor drives the camera across the track at a constant speed so that you don't have to worry about when you're pushing it with your hand that you're speeding up, slowing down, jerking it around or whatever. So that's, I do not own any motorized tracks. I own 2 slider tracks like that, and I typically just push them fast and then play the footage back slow.
So,
Is that understandable?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
so what I figured out is if I want all the equipment I need to do this as good as possible, I have to go back to work.
Yeah.
Jim, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
The track, what is it good for? What sorts of shots? I saw the one you just took. Could you not have done that with just a handheld gimbal?
Yes, you can do that with a gimbal and go and move sideways with the gimbal. You can. For something like that, the track is easier. Also, for certain short distance push in or pull out tracks or shots, push in or pull out shots that you only have to track a short distance, that works very well for those, for those type of shots. But anything where you've got something close up, close in front of the camera, and that you want to do a panning shot on, yes, and you can, and like I say, you can use a gimbal, but then you have to walk sideways, or you have to push your whole, push your arm or do that hip action motion sideways. And the length of the track that you saw me using there, it's hard to do a body movement the length of that track and stay level. You typically will go up on either end and lower in the middle if you're moving your body. You see what I'm saying? And if you're just holding it and walking sideways, the ninja walk is nearly impossible to do sidestepping. You see what I'm saying? Sidestepping becomes very jerky. So trying to sidestep for that shot is not good. And if you just try and rotate, if you're rotating, then you're moving the camera in a circular motion, and it changes the entire look of that shot, which is sometimes nice. Moving it in a circular motion is good, and you can only move it in a circular motion convex from your body. It's really hard to try and do a concave circular motion.
Right.
Now, they actually make something that I have called for doing circular panning shots like that, called a skater dolly. And if you can imagine a roller skate plate without a boot on it, but with a ball head where the actual boot that you put your foot in would go, and then the wheels, you can rotate the wheels to get a radius of turn, convex or concave, and you put a camera on it, and then you push that with your hand on wheels, and you roll it around on a flat surface, and you can do curved, panning shots like that. But the track is great for just level shots like that. Or you saw how I angled it up,
Right.
and you can push it up and down on the track, and get up down pan instead of left right pan. You get up down pan, and up down pan on a 45-degree angle can look fantastic. That's a shot that I do sometimes for certain things, is put that track at a 45-degree angle and push that camera across it at a 45-degree angle, so you get diagonal motion. You get left to right and up and down if you hold the track at a 45 degree. And like I say, that track has 1/4 20 and 5/8 thread holes on both ends. So you can put a tripod on each end of it to elevate that track in the air. And there's also a socket in the middle where you can put it on top of a tri-head, a tripod, and put a tripod in the middle of that track to support it. So the track can be supported on tripods. It also has legs that fold out on it, so you can put it on tabletops and stuff. I use it on tabletops for product work a lot.
Jim, I have a
And
question.
sliders are cheap. A slider like that is very inexpensive.
And with the, in how do you show that you can, go quickly on that slider with the slow motion frame rate? In the same token, if you are holding the camera, it's better to use slow motion, and you don't see as much, and you move quickly, you don't see as much movement. Right?
That is, yep, that is correct. If you do not have to record audio from the scene, you can do that, because if you try and record audio, when you slow the footage down, you slow the audio down, and is what you get for the audio. So you have to remember, if you're going to shoot something at a high frame rate with the intent of playing it slower later, that your audio is wasted. You cannot do that filming people talking, because you can't make the words match the mouth. But if you're filming static objects and you're not worried about anything in the scene that the sound has to match, if you don't need actual sound that accompanies the footage, you can get away with that trick. If you need sound that accompanies the footage, you actually have to record it at the frame rate you're going to play it back at. You can't mismatch the frame rate if you're recording audio with your actual footage. Is that understandable?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, John.
Yeah. If you're gonna put a movie together that's a 30 frame per second timeline movie, anything with audio has to, that's real audio that you're recording, has to be shot at 30 frames per second. So if you're now, like, waterfalls and things like that look fantastic if you film them in slow motion, but you can't record the sound of the waterfall, because when you play the sound back, it won't match. Slowed down sound, 2x, 4x, 8x slowed down sound doesn't work right.
Dub it and bring it in on a separate track.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. Can
Mm-hmm.
you record it separately and then add it?
And it's better with something like that to have a music soundtrack, because also you record a nice super slow motion waterfall, it looks amazing, but you have the sound of fast rushing water accompanying this very slow moving water. It's very disconcerting and is not right. It's much better to just have the appropriate music soundtrack behind something like that. Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can play with the video. You have a lot of choices on most of the phones today. With cinematic, you have regular video, you have slow-mo video, and you can play with those and just see how they work in terms of sound.
And also, if you just pick a high frame rate, just using the frame rate option, your device typically will record audio, because then it figures you're intending to play it back at that frame rate as well. However, if you pick one of the modes that says slow motion, If you deliberately pick slow motion on anything, it automatically disables the mic on the camera. It won't even record audio as soon as you pick a slow motion option for that reason.
So if you use the slow-mo on your camera, on your phone, and you walk, you don't have to actually do the ninja walk, because as you walk and you move, it's gonna smooth things out, just kind of like that camera going across the rail.
Right. The motion is still there. It's just much less noticeable because it's happening so much slower that it becomes much less noticeable that the motion is there.
All right.
Mm-hmm. And also, cameras have internal stabilization, which helps as well. Having all your stabilization options turned on also helps smooth that out. So those are all techniques for smoothness. All right, here we go. So what I'm going to show you guys now is what's called a parallax shot. And what that does, it visually exaggerates the motion in a scene by having objects very close to the camera that the camera moves past in relation to objects that are very distant from the camera. So I have this nice pond with a tree line on the other side, and I have these pine trees right here that I'm actually going to pan the camera past, and you will see the trees moving in front of the scene actually being the lake itself. And I'll let you see what that looks like. I'm going to make several passes using a couple different techniques so that I can use the footage in the end that looks the best. Never be afraid to record too much to cut those few seconds that you need for your final production.
Yeah, it gives it more like 3D look.
Yeah, that's a video technique. It's called a parallax shot. You put something close to the camera and something distant from the camera, and you move the camera past the close objects and let them go past the camera. It's done with trees all the time, but other objects as well, and they call that a parallax shot. And you notice, like I say, I tried a whole bunch of different things with that camera just to get a couple seconds of footage. You saw me holding the camera different ways, swinging my arms different ways. When you're doing something like a panning shots handheld are the most difficult to get level and stable and not shaky. And so that's why I did a whole bunch of different ways, and just to get a couple seconds after reviewing all the different footage from all the different ways I was swinging the camera around and walking sideways and whatnot. This is another thing I'll tell you when it comes to panning shots, especially handheld. The stabilization that's built into cameras, and also post-production stabilization algorithms that are in your editing software, that's the shot they fall down on. That is the hardest shot for stabilization in camera to stabilize, is panning shots. And if you pan too quickly, that really causes a mess with stabilization. Stabilization techniques and software have a real difficult time with fast panning rates and can actually make it worse than what it was. They'll actually exaggerate the motion instead of fixing the motion. There is, if it's really important, if it were like paid work for client work or whatever, you can go online. There's a website that has a table that has all the standard video frame rates, and then it tells you if you're going to pan, what speed you have to pan at. And it's ridiculously slow. It'll say if you need to do a 180 degree pan at 30 frames per second, that you have to take like 12 seconds to get through a 180 degree pan, which is much slower than you really can do easily. That's very hard to slow yourself down and do that. But there's a whole chart for every frame rate and how many degrees of panning you want to do as to how slow you actually have to do it, how many seconds to take to get from point A to point B in order for stabilization to actually work on the footage. But so I say it's much easier, like you see me, just, yeah, a lot of footage ends up on, as they say, the cutting room floor. But yeah, as long as you have plenty of memory on your SD card, just make a bunch of shots. I think I took 30 seconds of footage there to get like 4 seconds of actual footage, and that's not unusual. It's not unusual at all in video. Just think about when you go out in stills, how many hundreds of shots you may take just to get those 2 or 3 keepers. Same thing in video. Shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot just to get those few seconds of good footage that you need. And you're going to throw a lot of footage away.
So what size of SD card should we have when doing the video? Would be recommended?
The most you can afford for your camera. I have 128 gig cards in the mirrorless cameras that I shoot with, and I do a lot of footage with the GoPros and the action cameras and stuff. And I have some 256 and some 512 gigabyte cards in those.
Okay, thank you.
Because that gives me lots of leeway to just record lots of footage, because literally, if you get serious about this, you will discover that 90 to 95% of what you shoot gets trashed. You end up using, maybe, and if you're using 10% of the footage you shoot, you're doing good.
It's about the right for keepers on still as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just translate that to video and realize, you're going to cut out, most of what you film, you're going to cut out when you put a final production together. You're going to shoot 9-10 times more footage than you actually ever need. You're going to put a 1-minute video together. You're doing fantastic if you can make a 1-minute video out of 10 minutes of footage. Let me tell you what.
Jim, did you say that you keep your camera on autofocus?
Depends on what I'm doing. It all depends on what I'm doing. Sometimes it's manual focus, and I will pre-focus it at an area, or if the subject is not moving or whatever, it'll be manual focus. Point focus.
What about when you were panning the lake?
Oh, when I was panning the lake, that camera was set for huge depth of field. That camera gives huge depth of field, and and I knew it would have everything in focus from the trees in front of me to the lake behind me. I was using a GoPro for that, and that's one of the reasons I have so many different kind of cameras that I use. I have a couple of what they call DJI Osmo, which are gimbal stabilized cameras. I have several GoPro cameras. I've got the cell phone, and I've got 2 mirrorless cameras that I use for video. And every one of them gives me different options with what I can do with depth of field and focusing and different things where, each one can do something another one can't. If that makes sense?
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So for that one, that was strictly autofocus. That camera was just autofocusing with huge depth of field. I didn't manipulate any of that. I just had a frame rate. I just had it set at 30 frames per second, and and a video codec for the colors that I wanted, and just stuck it on the gimbal. And so one last shot that I'll show you here. Okay, one other shot that I'm going to show you that's a classic video shot is called an orbit shot, which is basically where your subject stays stationary, but the camera orbits it in a circle. And I'm just going to use this sign over here just for demonstration purposes and let you see how that works. I am recording, and basically I am just moving in a circle and keeping that subject centered. So yeah, and that's another classic video shot, is the orbit shot, circling around something.
I notice a lot of videos, they end by going up to the sky. Is that something that is like normal or common?
Just, it depends on who's making the footage and what you're looking at. You know, I don't see that a lot on television shows and movies. That's something you see certain people are doing on YouTube a lot. It's kind of a common thing with certain types of videos on YouTube. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a great ending shot that you can point it into the sky and then do a fade out. You can do, and in video they call it a dip. Dip to black, dip to white. What you would call a fade out.
Mhm.
And that, just transitioning up to the sky is something great to do. Also, just defocusing, just letting it go to a blur and then fading out to black or white is a common ending transition as well. Yeah, and if you can see here, like, this is the drone. You see the little camera in there? That camera is on a 3-axis gimbal, just like those handheld gimbals I was showing you. Except in this case, it's not on a handle. It flies through the air, but that camera does the same. And you've got a joystick on your controller that controls that, just like the joystick on those handheld gimbals. And I'll show you right here, one of my favorite cameras. This is the camera. This is actually the camera that was filming me on that. And I want you to notice something. Do you see that? See that there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Does it look familiar, like what you just saw on the drone?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the same camera that's on the drone, but it's on its own handheld gimbal. This is a complete unit. You don't buy a camera separately, like the GoPro, and stick it in a gimbal, like the phone, you stick it in a gimbal. This is the gimbal and the camera are all one unit.
And what is that again?
This is from DJI, the same company that makes the drone. That's why the camera is the same. And guess what? You know who makes that camera? Hasselblad.
So glad.
Yes. This is a Hasselblad camera. This is three-axis stabilized Hasselblad camera. That's DJI licensed the camera technology from Hasselblad. So yeah, there you. This is a DJI Osmo Pocket 3. And it's an all-in-one unit. You don't have to buy a separate camera, separate gimbal. That's it. The battery is in here. The joystick is, the red button is the record, and this little black piece right here is the joystick. So I've got the joystick right there. You can see the camera up, down, tilt, panning, rotation. And stabilized.
Yeah, I've seen.
This is what was filming me, and this is the camera that filmed me in that video.
He films things with the camera in his pocket. Remember when we were in Georgia and you did that?
Yep. Yeah, I filmed the inside of my pocket a lot of times because this and the GoPro cameras, Yeah, they end up in my pocket all the time, and yeah, sometimes the record button gets pushed. Yeah, just the other day, I found out I had 35 minutes of the inside of my pocket recorded on a GoPro.
My husband used to do the sounds of skiing routinely. with the snow underneath, that whatever was under his skis. Yeah, swish, swish, swish.
Yeah, see, there's a GoPro camera. There's that gimbal for the GoPro camera. The GoPro just snaps into there. It's got a little arm that just snaps.
So you've shown us a bunch of specialized video cameras. If you could only own one, what would you own?
My cell phone.
Given the choice of only one, this one.
Yeah.
Osmo Pocket. This is like one of the hottest cameras out there that's being used by videographers. You know, do any of you guys know Scott Kelby One?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know that they shoot 90% of their video productions with this?
Seriously.
Seriously.
Wow.
This is 90% of their video productions are shot with this camera right here.
And what's it called?
DJI Osmo Pocket. This is the 3rd generation.
Is that related to that thing we bought, Lynn?
Yeah, it's the same company.
Yeah, the same company makes these, gimbals for your phone.
For the
Yeah.
phone.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely are the gadget man.
It's all about the right tool for the job, because I've reached the point a while ago where I make money doing this. I have people pay me for videos, so it behooves me to have enough different variety and equipment to do what I need to make a decent production for somebody. And I'm not saying that I'm that great that I make any kind of fantastic cinematic productions. I make social media marketing videos. But
Maybe I want to come to your house and play with your toys.
but yeah, given if I were to be told only one camera, it would be this one, and the second choice would be this one, the GoPro. Yeah, and depending on what you're doing, one advantage, this one's not waterproof, weatherproof, and you drop this, and I have a generation 1, I dropped it on its head and bent the gimbal, one drop and it's ruined. The GoPro is an entirely different story. The GoPro is built for you to beat the crap out of it. You stick it underwater. I've had these, underwater in the ocean. I film underwater footage with these in the rain, drop them, kick them, run them over with your truck. You practically cannot hurt it. The other thing about the GoPro is for it's like $65 extra a year. No questions asked. No matter what you do to it, they'll replace it 2 times a year.
Oh wow!
You crush it, drown it, break it, destroy it.
GoPro insurance.
Twice a year.
Jim, is that the one you use?
Same thing with the drone. My drone can fly away, crash, drown in the ocean, whatever. Twice a year, I can get this replaced.
You did a video one time of in a tidal pool. It was underwater and stuff. Were you using the that?
Actually, you know what I did? I only owned one camera at the time. It was the 1st generation model of this. But they do sell an underwater housing you can put this in.
Oh, okay.
So I have the underwater housing, and you can put this in an underwater housing to use it underwater, but that's something extra you have to buy and own then is the underwater housing. The GoPro just is, goes underwater. Jack was with me in the Everglades about a year ago, and you remember, Jack, I put the GoPro on a 30-foot telescoping pole. and was
Yeah.
filming alligators underwater. And
Oh,
my other GoPro that's over here has a chip out of the glass screen because an alligator decided he didn't like my underwater GoPro, and an alligator bit it
it looked tasty to them.
while I was filming. And there's a chip out of the glass screen on the back from the alligator
I
biting my
bet that
GoPro
looks interesting when
because
you
you know,
looked at it.
They were doing that in Antarctica. They were split filming the penguin.
I was hoping it would look interesting, but you see the camera approaching the alligator underwater
Oh.
and the alligator looking at it, and then the next thing you just see this great big blur as the alligator just went, you know, and all the water, all the motion of the water just blurred the footage to where you couldn't actually see, you know, the alligator.
Oh, that's too bad.
Because there was just too much blur of the water. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm gonna have this great footage of my camera getting chomped on.
Wildlife.
So why don't you order a 360-degree camera?
That's probably going to be the next toy I play with. There is some cool things that are being done with those. However, I have to justify that because none of the work that I'm doing for clients that pays for this stuff is requiring the type of footage that comes from a 360-degree camera. None of the actual work that I do to get paid for requires that. That's something kind of fun. Or if I were involved in, you know, some of these extreme or action sports or something and getting paid for producing those videos, yeah, that would be a fantastic camera for doing some of that work.
How do you do a 360? Put it on your head?
Say it again.
How do you do use a 360 camera? You put it on your head? Because if you have it in front of you, then it's going to record you.
No, actually, the 360 cameras have a stick that's like a tripod monopod stick, and built into the 360-degree camera, it has AI that recognizes its own stick and generative fill that recognizes the stick and replaces it with generative AI in camera. And it does it in camera so that when you replay the footage, you never see the stick.
Oh, he's been doing his research.
There's incredible stabilization. I've seen them on the handlebars of a motorcycle.
Oh yeah, the
It's
GoPro,
visibly vibrating, but the footage from it is very smooth.
I say this one right here, the stabilization in this GoPro is amazing. This particular one, you notice I have it in a housing that adds a nice, you know, microphone, you know, to it and everything. Yeah. This one, when I have this housing on it with the extra mic for the quality audio and whatnot, won't fit in the gimbal. But this is the latest generation. This is so stable. I don't even worry about putting this in the gimbal. I handheld this. I just do this with it, and it is buttery smooth. It is handholding this is as good as anything I shoot with a gimbal. Yeah, the latest generation of GoPro built-in stabilization is mind-boggling.
Well, it makes sense because they use it for such crazy things that, you know, on top of helmets and, you know, on their chest. None of that's stable. So.
Yeah, I was on a shoot where they were mounted on dirt bikes going on the track, and every mount broke, and two of the cameras got ran over by dirt bikes, and they're fine. I ran over one of mine with my truck one time, and yeah, it's fine.
Wow.
Yeah, I have three of those because they are so versatile. Yeah, you can throw them in the air, you know, and get footage. They can bounce on the ground. They're made to be abused. That's you know, one of the nice things about them. One of them I have is made for extreme abuse. It doesn't even have the screen on the back to replay it. You just have to pull the card and replay the footage, or you can use the phone. There's a phone app, and you can replay the footage on the phone, but it doesn't even have a screen on the back because that's the one that they really expect. Yeah, this is the one you want to run over with cars and, you know, drop on rocks and everything.
Brian, you need that.
That's, that's yeah. In fact, yeah, it's the exact same thing as that one over there, but no screen on the back. It just has an extra mount, on the back,
Okay.
for and some heat sink fins, to help cool it because it's a little bit smaller. But yeah, this one, all it has is the camera lens on it and the record button and the power button, and
Cool.
and that's it. Yeah, this is made. The other ones are made for abuse. This one is made for because it doesn't even have a screen that an alligator can bite and crack.
Now, do you use some of the GoPros for just regular photography, or are there video cameras?
Oh yeah, they're still camera. Yeah, they take still photos. You can take still photos with them. They do still photos, video, time lapse, and they do have for different things. This you can see here. That pops off. You can interchange, wide angle lenses and fisheye lenses and different things on there.
Cool.
They are cool, and they're inexpensive. They're
I thought there were a lot of gadgets
right now, depending on I think they're on the Model 12 right now. I think is on sale for like $350. I mean, that's less than what you're going to pay for a lens, on a mirrorless camera. To have for the price, they are so great for being an entry level thing. This other one here, I think this is about $500.
Yeah, 519.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if you
shopping.
And it's it's more than that if you get the whole kit that has
669.
Yep, tripod foot, booster battery that you can snap on there, and yeah. And the really cool thing about that kit is it comes with a remote wireless microphone that you can also remotely activate and deactivate. You can remotely hit record and stop recording from the remote microphone. I don't know if you noticed, but this is what I was wearing in that video. Did you hear how nice my audio sounded?
Yeah,
It did sound good.
Yeah. This was clipped on the my jacket.
Yeah,
This is
looks
clipped on the
like you
collar
could
of my
shave
jacket.
with it too. Use it to rub it on that shave cream. Yeah.
But yeah, so all my audio that you heard on that video is recorded on this, which is part of that extra, that kit that comes with this.
Huh.
GoPro 12 is $399.
$399. Yeah, it was like they had a sale of like $350 like a week ago or so, which was like the lowest price it's ever been. But yeah, $399 is good. They initially were $400 and something when that model came out. But they're amazing. That's an amazing price to get yourself into if you want really, really easy to shoot video. That's one of the either this for $500 or this for $399. They're pretty unbeatable for the quality you get and how easy they are to use. They're practically point and shoot. You can go in the menu and set your frame rate and this and that, and once it's set, all you do is push the record button. In fact, what's cool about these, you don't even have to turn them on. They just remember your last set of settings. There is a power button, you can turn it on and have it on, but if you just say, oh my God, I need to record that, you can just pick it up and push the red button and it starts recording without you even have to worry about, oh, where's the power switch? Let me turn it on. It will instantly record if you hit the record button at the last settings you left it in.
Which is why we get pictures of the inside of your pocket.
Yeah.
That's exactly why there's 35 minutes of the inside of my pocket. You're exactly right. Yep. Yeah, I took it out of my pocket and was like, ooh, that camera's toasty and warm. And I said, how much footage do I have? And I looked at 35 minutes of black.
So Jim, the next episode, are we going to get to learn a little bit about editing?
Editing, yes, that's going to be the now for the camera club meeting. It's going to be just some basic stuff, related to some of this, and a few other things. Editing is going to be its own whole, separate thing. But yeah, there was some other stuff that I thought that somebody had asked about that we said we might address afterwards if we wanted, and I don't remember what that question was about. But yeah,
Who is the person?
But anybody right now while I'm on, anybody has any questions, I'll talk about it.
Who is the person in a film production who designs the procedures that you're going to follow? This will be a rail shot. Now we're going to move over, and this is going to be a zoom shot. And
that's what a director does. That's the director's job on a movie. The director decides, oh yeah, we're going to have a dolly in shot. This is going to be a dolly out shot. We're going to do a panning track. Now in Hollywood, I'm sure you've seen, where the camera operator is sitting in a chair on little train tracks.
Yeah.
And they push them, that's, with the big cameras, that's how they do it. However, nowadays, a lot of productions are being done completely with mirrorless and DSLR cameras and such. A lot of feature film productions being used.
A lot of drone shots too.
A lot of drone shots. Yes, they use big drones. Because what they do for those movies, they don't use a drone like this with a built-in camera. They take these real mirrorless and DSLR and cinema cameras, and they have great big drones, and they hang a real camera. And there's a gimbal on it, and then they have to do that whole balancing act. They have to balance a camera on a gimbal that's suspended under a big drone. They're typically 8 or 16 rotor drones that will carry 10, 15, 20 pound camera payloads in the air.
So what will the judges be looking for when we do our assignment?
Story. The content of the story itself, how well you present your story in the form of moving pictures versus still pictures. That's primary. Secondary might be, how well was it edited? But that's going to be very minor. This is not about how good you are at learning to edit video. Judging this video will be about, in a different media where you're used to telling a story within one single frame, now you have the leeway of having like 30 seconds to a minute to tell a story with motion and sound and multiple pictures, as in multiple scenes. You can have multiple scenes and narrative and dialogue and music and whatever to tell your story. It expands your capabilities of telling your story outside of the boundaries of a single still photo. That's the purpose of this assignment, not to necessarily see, how steady are you at holding the camera? Is your footage too shaky or not shaky? That's not really what you're going to be judged on. Now, yeah, you might get bonus points if you do a really good job that way, but it's really about, how well can you tell a story outside the boundaries of that single still photo, now that you can have multiple scenes, multiple images, and dialogue, narrative, and sound.
Oh, so you don't want just 30 seconds of video, you want a production.
Well, it can be 30, if it's compelling enough, sure, it can just be 30 seconds of something happening. If that's a compelling story, absolutely, that's fine. You don't have to come up with, you don't have to make a cinematography movie, with people and characters and a script or anything like that. Yes, it absolutely can be just a single 30-second shot of something interesting, if you want.
Would my camera have audio?
Sorry.
Say that again, Sue.
Would my camera have audio?
Talking about your Pentax DSLR?
Yeah.
Yes, it has audio. Yep.
Oh,
I
good to know.
video with with that. That was the first. In fact, and that brings us up. I should show this to you guys. It's a couple minutes long. One of the things that I want to impart. This is one of the things I'm actually going to show this and do this, in the camera club meeting when I show it. But the thing I want to impart about this is the most important thing is even don't worry about all those settings, anything else. If you've got something interesting in front of the camera, just push the record button and record it. And that will get you started creatively. Yes, you can work your way into figuring out, better settings. And this would look better that way, and learning, all these settings and everything that we covered that are in your camera. But the thing to do is point the camera at something interesting and hit the record button. That's the very first video I ever made. My camera, my Pentax camera, had a video button on it. I had never done video or anything. I went on a trip to the mountains, and I was up in the Smoky Mountains, and I was like, you know what? Let me just try pushing this record button. And there were falling leaves coming off the trees. And I was like, I really like the motion of those falling leaves. That looks nice. Let me just hit record. And then I went to another spot and I was like, well, it's autumn. There's more leaves. Oh, and there's more. And look, there's leaves floating in the stream. And I just started hitting the record button. I didn't know the first damn thing about frame rate, shutter speed, anything. I just was in the Smoky Mountains for a couple days and just kept hitting the video record button. I didn't have any editing software other than Windows Movie Maker that came in my computer at the time. And I just strung the clips together and told it fade between the clips. And I'll let you see it. Right now, it's a short little video, but it was the very first thing I ever did. And like I say, that kind of inspired me. But I'll let you see here. Let me see.
I think Kathy had a question too.
There's a question.
Kathy had one, I think.
What was the length of time what's the maximum length of time?
It's on the website.
I thought it was like a minute and a half.
That could be, like anything up to 90 seconds. That sounds about right.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, okay. Go here. It is on my desktop. Because I set it there so I could do it for the other movie. Okay.
Video is 90 seconds or less.
Yeah.
Oh, you beat me. I was looking it up.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this was just me. It was not even planned. This just fell together, and then I got some royalty music. Oh, and we need to talk about royalty-free music for putting your videos together. That's something I'm going to cover in the class, but I can mention it for you guys. So I got a piece of royalty-free music so I could post it online when I put it together. But this was me knowing absolutely not a damn thing about how you're supposed to make video or record video, just pushing the button on the camera. So, okay, 2 minutes and 54 seconds.
top kind of looks like an alligator
It does.
sleeping.
Very good.
So,
Very nice.
and one of the reasons I was going to show this at the meeting, and I will, is because it also illustrates a lot of beginner mistakes. That was the first thing I put together, not knowing anything. One of the things I'll tell you, and watch, you know, most anything these days, 5 seconds is a long time. 10 seconds is a really long time. That part where it floating in the water dragged on way too long in that clip. That was the first thing I ever made. And one of the beginner mistakes is, oh, you're pushing that record button and you're using up all that memory and all that time. And you come back and you have all this footage in your computer and you have that tendency, just like when you were learning to be a photographer, that you didn't want to delete any of your shots and you don't want to cut that footage down and you want to use every second of footage that you shot for every scene. And you have to be just as judicious about cutting your video as you are when you're culling your photos. You know, you really, you know, unless it's dialogue or you're telling, or something just really does go on longer. These days we're conditioned when we're watching videos, if something goes on for more than 10 seconds, it just gets, you know, it gets difficult to watch. You know, we're so used to cut. So many videos right now are cutting half a second, 1 second. You know, watch any trailer for a movie or the opening credits for TV show these days. Look at how fast those scenes, you know, cut.
Oh gosh,
you know.
yes.
Yeah, I mean, 2 seconds is a long time for a lot of movie trailers and things like that. You know, 2 seconds is a long cut. You know,
That was
so
really a windy day that in that beginning. That was a lot of leaves falling.
Yeah.
and that's what started it for me. I was there and looking at that and I was taking still photos and I was like, but this looks so nice to watch these falling leaves. I've got this video button on my camera, you know, push the video button. And then I played it back on my screen and I was like, oh, I want to do more of that. And this was the very first video I ever made. That's how that happened together, because I was standing on that dirt road watching those leaves fall and decided, hey, I've never pushed this video button on my camera before. Let me do that. And
I've
at
never
that
used
time,
it.
that
I've given it
camera,
up on
that
my
camera
camera.
only did 1080, and I have no idea what frame rate or anything it was recording in. I just hit the button. So that's what
On
I
the
want to
log-
impart to you. At the very least, don't stress about any of that stuff with the settings. Get something interesting in front of the camera and push the record button.
On the logs, did you stage those leaves and on the fence?
Absolutely. No, the leaves were on the fence. Now
Yeah.
I did poke a couple leaves into the cracks in the log. Yes, that was
I was
me.
looking at that and
I was
going,
really
yeah.
getting into the creative flow by that point.
It looked really good. It looked really good.
You measured the royalty-free music. Have you got a source for
Yes,
that?
because anything you're going to publish online, if you're going to put it on YouTube or anything like that, you don't want a copyright strike. You don't want to take it down. If we're going to record the meeting and put it online, our channel would get a copyright strike if you do not use royalty-free music. I'll get into that into detail in the actual Camera Club meeting, but that's what you want to search for. And I will show you during the Camera Club meeting, there are places on YouTube where you can go and they have accessible royalty-free music where you can download some songs and stuff to use for free. If you have a video editing program that already came with your computer or with your phone or whatever, and there are songs in there that they let you use, those songs are royalty-free as well. You don't have copyright issues with those. You can't go out and just get any song that's on the radio or some song that's your favorite song, and put it on there. And now something has just recently, like within the last month, I think, changed a little bit with respect to that. Now I actually pay. I have 2 services that I go to that have literally hundreds of thousands of royalty-free songs that it's just like, Lightroom, Photoshop, you pay a monthly subscription, you pay $9.99 to Adobe for your software. I pay a monthly fee to a service where I can get B-roll video clips, additional stock still photos, and hundreds of thousands of songs that won't have a copyright issue if I use them for a client, and anybody publishes them online anywhere, they go on YouTube, whatever. That was royalty-free music that was playing behind that track there. So there's no issue with that. But they're these services that you can pay a monthly fee and get access to hundreds of thousands of songs. A new one just came on the market recently that actually will let you get licenses to popular songs that are on the radio and stuff. And these used to be, if you wanted to license these and put them in things, I know from people that have done this, sometimes they were up to $10,000 for a one-time play, of a popular song, from the radio. That's how expensive licenses for stuff like that. And those are the ones, the stuff you hear on the radio stuff, those are the ones that they come down on you immediately if you publish, something from them. But a new subscription service just came out that has access to popular music from the radio. And it's a 2-tiered thing. You do pay a monthly subscription to have access to the service, but they have reasonable rates to license then a specific song, and every song has its own, price on top of the monthly. You're paying monthly to get access to the songs, and then, say you pick a song by a popular group that's on the radio and you want to play, it'll have its own price here. It may be like $30, to license that song, to be able to put it on your video, to put it on YouTube or something like that. So you're paying your monthly subscription, and then and they say starting at $8 a song. Well, $8 is going to be for a song that, few people have heard of. And then the price goes up for popular songs. But a lot of stuff is in the $20, $30 range, that you can pay to do that. So that's a new service that just came out. It's called Lickd, Lickd is the service. But if you're not producing videos on a constant basis, even that's an expensive proposition. But you've typically most of your Mac computers, your Windows computers do have some basic video editing software in them that came with free music. And if you have an Adobe subscription, you have access to some songs that are in there as well. And I'll show that during my presentation in the Camera Club meeting. There's a light version of Premiere called Premiere Rush, and there's a certain amount of songs that Adobe has included in that are free. So,
when is your class?
That's the May technical night presentation. So that'll be fourth Friday in May.
And July is
fourth Thursday in May. My mistake. Fourth Thursday.
And July is when it's due.
Okay.
God.
Yeah, so you've got a couple of months to work on your video, so.
Yeah. So yeah, and like I say, even if you just want to start recording stuff,
And you
now,
guys have a head start over the people who didn't come tonight.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
You people are here because you're a little more interested in it, so you're getting a little more, a little more than the basic information.
Yeah, and we had some good time lapses last year, and a lot of people didn't.
Oh, the
do it
time
because they
lapses were
afraid
great.
to. And a lot of people didn't do it. Hopefully we got more people do the videos this year than we did the time lapses last year, because we had fun doing the time lapses. So.
Jim, could you put some you suggestion equipment like some holder, I know GoPro. Another thing so could you give me a little bit of name in or link whereby Amazon can bought this start?
Oh yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can get it all on Amazon. It's
Yeah,
all
all
available
on
on Amazon.
I said I don't know name.
She wants to know
She's
the
asking
names of
for a
stuff.
list.
She wants to know what you
okay.
I want to
Asking
list.
for a
You
list.
can give me a little suggestion and the list.
Here, I'm going to type it in right now in chat message.
Okay.
There's one, and
That's the little skinny one. It's like
yeah,
this. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the Osmo Pocket. Now
Okay.
you're gonna do the GoPro.
Mhm.
GoPro 12
GoPro.
Black. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
And then you have to get the gimbal to go with the
That-
little GoPro.
that's this one. And if you get the GoPro 12 Black, trust me, you're almost as good as a gimbal
Right, that's true.
in your hands with the GoPro 12. That's why I picked this one up, and I have this is the really rugged one to get beat up, and then this is the one I hold in my hand, and then this is the one that I stick in the gimbal. This is a GoPro 10. The GoPro 10 is not as stabilized as the 12. So the 10 is the one I stick in the gimbal because it doesn't have the good stabilization. The 12, I don't bother to put this in a gimbal. I shoot handheld with this.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Jim,
Yeah.
which gimbal did you use for your cell phone?
Some cheap thing off of Amazon. Let me see if it let me see, where's the one for the phone? Hang on, I think it's in my kitchen.
Yeah, well then I've got the DJI gimbal for the phone. That's what Diana's got as well. So that's actually a pretty good one. It's a little more expensive than there's cheaper ones out there, but if your phone is heavier, then you need a bigger, more expensive handle. I think those handles run $100. So
Yeah, the DJI one that's out there is nice. DJI was not making them at the time I bought this. This is like 3 years old, and oh, wait a minute. Oh, this is a Zhiyun, and Zhiyun is actually they're well known in the gimbal world. They make the big gimbal that I showed you.
Yeah.
Zhiyun is it makes a whole series of those big gimbals, and they're the Zhiyun ones are well priced in any gimbal that you buy. It's spelled ZHIYUN, but they make gimbals in every size and range for every camera, and at the time DJI was not making these for phones, but now if I had to replace this one, then I would buy the DJI one right now.
Okay. Thank you.
And the one that I use for the GoPros, which is fantastic. I absolutely love this thing, and I love the name just as much. It's the Hohem. 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 But yeah, this is fantastic. This works so well with the GoPro. Yeah, the other nice thing about this, it connects wirelessly to the GoPro, has a record button right here on it. So you don't even have to reach up and hit the record button on the GoPro. You can just use your thumb and hit the record button, right there on the gimbal, and have it start recording.
The DJI hand, the gimbal for the phone has the same thing. Everything's right on the handle.
Yep.
You touch the phone once you put it on there.
This one has it too. The red button, right here is the record button that starts recording on the phone without you having to touch the phone. Yep, that's pretty standard in gimbals. Even that big monster gimbal that I have that's sitting on the floor back there, it has a record button on it. So even like my Fujifilm X-H2 or my X-T3 that I put on there, I don't have to touch the camera to initiate recording because there is a record button on the gimbal. The gimbal itself in those has a USB connection right into the USB port on the camera to control it.
This is the DJI handle.
Yeah, there's the big one.
It folds up, so it's actually pretty small.
Mm-hmm.
And then you open it up like that.
And all of them have tripod feet that go on the bottom of them, so that you can stick the gimbal, on a table or on the ground or whatever with the tripod foot. But yeah, even if you just want to start using your phone and just using the video modes in your phone, what's that DJI gimbal cost right now, Lynn?
Like
about 100 and something.
100 and something, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's cheap because you already have the phone.
Great.
Yeah.
So Jim, with my telephoto lens, I know if I don't want to buy that large gimbal, what limitations do I have, or do you have any suggestions for?
You're limited to. You could be handheld. You could put it on the fluid head on the tripod, and you can put it on a slider track if you mount the foot that's on the lens to the ball head on the slider.
Okay. Well, I have
because you actually on that slider, you can actually you can take your tripod head off of your tripod.
Yeah.
And screw it onto a slider track so that your tripod head that you are used to that holds your camera, you can put it on track. You just have to balance it because that long lens sticking out will tip the track over.
Well, I
That's
did
why
buy
you want to mount
a
the
gimbal,
lens to it.
but I think it's only a 2-axis gimbal, the Siru, or it just doesn't seem to do well when I'm moving the camera. Maybe more than horizontally.
Yeah, a 2-axis gimbal is missing 1/3 of what you need for true stabilization.
Yeah. And,
I did not even know you could buy a 2-axis gimbal.
Well, I don't know if it's 2-axis. I mean, it goes around, and then.
Now here's the other thing: when you bought this, it's a brand I never heard of. Did you look in the specs and add up the weight of your camera and the weight of your lens, and then see if the payload capacity of the gimbal
Yes.
beats it? Okay.
Yeah. And it's great for still shots and a little bit of movement, but it's not allowing me to do a video with smooth transition.
Yeah, and I say it's one of those things that you get what you pay for, and in the bargain stuff, they are not as stable as when you pay more money for one.
I had to take the ball off of my tripod. That just wasn't hacking it at all with the telephoto lens. So
now you can get away with, if you remember, a lot of us back in the day before ball heads used standard good old fashioned pan and tilt heads. Yeah. And you can loosen those up on your tripod, and they don't have the friction resistance that a fluid head has, but a standard old fashioned pan and tilt tripod head is still way better than a ball head. you can actually get some very smooth motion with a good old fashioned, because that's what a fluid head is. It's an old fashioned pan and tilt head, but it's just got it. You can dial the resistance, whereas on your pan and tilt heads, they're pretty much either loose or locked. There's no in between. That's the only difference with a fluid head. A fluid head, lets you adjust in between locked and loose to various levels of friction. But that's all it is a pan and tilt head.
Okay.
That's all a fluid head is an old-fashioned pan and tilt head that just has adjustable resistance on the pan and tilt.
Okay. I think I need more practice with this thing too.
Yes, that's the one thing. Yep, that even if it's not anything you ever intend, just for practice, and I've done a lot of that just out in my yard. Just filming the shrubbery and the trees and my cars in the driveway, just to practice the camera movements, just to practice the ninja walk, practice the panning, the tilting, everybody sucks at first. That's
and
it's
your neighbors
just
think you're weird.
It's just like anything else.
Weird.
You just look at it, see, delete the footage, do it again, look at it, delete, it's all just for you to look at and see how, am I getting better? How much smoother am I getting? It's just for you to practice getting smooth. But that's
actually, I take my utility vehicle down in the pasture and I sit in my utility vehicle and I watch these birds. And I've actually hooked the bracket of the lens over the steering wheel, and I kind of use that as my stabilization.
There you go.
And it works a little bit, but it's not great.
Yeah. Now, some of the things that you can do, like with the gimbal, I have the big gimbal I was showing you.
Yeah.
You can remote control all the motions of the gimbal with a phone.
Oh, can you?
You can actually remotely, you can hold the phone in your hand, and whatever you do with the phone in your hand, the gimbal mirrors your motion. I've put that gimbal. You can put those gimbals on a tripod, by the way. There's a mounting screw on the bottom of it.
I would imagine, yeah.
I put that gimbal on a heavy duty tripod and strapped it down with cargo straps in the back of my F-350 pickup truck, and did some filming of cars, on the road. Some stuff for I did one shoot for a client with this, but I had somebody drive the truck for me, and I sat safely in the passenger seat with my cell phone, and my cell phone is showing me through my camera. I'm seeing what the camera is seeing on the gimbal, and I'm just riding in the passenger seat of the truck, and I'm doing this.
Oh.
The gimbal in the back of the truck pointing out behind me at the car that's driving behind me is doing the movements for me with nobody in the back of the truck touching the gimbal. And I'm seeing through my camera what's being recorded on my phone, and just saying, okay, let's do a little tilt. Let's look it up.
So does that work on a bumpy road?
So that's when you pay more money, you get features like that. It also has, that gimbal has a follow feature where, like, if I wanted to be on camera, I could put the camera on that gimbal and I could put it in follow mode, and it recognizes me. And then as I move around, in the room, or whatever, the gimbal will follow me around automatically with no user input.
Yeah, I think that's a little above my price range. Or my
but that's what I'm saying. As you spend money, these things come into play that are just more gimmicks and toys, or as I say, useful features.
Useful features, of course.
Now, will we be able to go back and watch this video?
I'm recording it. Yes.
Okay. Cool.
This is being recorded. Yes.
Perfect.
Send out the link.
Great job.
He'll have the link on there from the previous class as well, which is nothing but settings.
That's the one where, you have this very expensive DSLR mirrorless camera, and you look at the video settings, and it's like, what is
What?
all this crazy stuff that I don't know what it is? That's my attempt to explain it all. You know, like I say, at the outset, as you go along, yes, learn that stuff as you go along. Get a couple basic things dialed in. I have a cheat sheet that I post that goes along with it, a document that has everything in it and explains. And then at the end, there's a cheat sheet that says, look, if you want to do this, pick these settings. If you want to do that, pick these settings. And like I say, go from there and don't stress. Push the record button. Don't look through your eyepiece. Don't look at the screen. Frame it up, look in your screen or your eyepiece, first, frame it, hit the record button, and then look over the camera and, walk around, do the ninja walk, do your panning, whatever you want to do, and that's the best advice I can give you.
So you're going to post the cheat sheet also?
Say it again.
Are you going to post the cheat sheet?
Yes. Yeah, there's a link to that. It's a document that exists online. And there's a link to the sheet. There's everything that I talk about in that video.
Yeah.
It's written out as well, because there's a lot of numbers and a lot of acronyms and a lot of names for things. And so there's a lot of, the definitions that I explain in the video are written out in the document. And some of it is really technical stuff, but it's just explaining, what are these things that you're reading in all these video menus that you never heard of before. Then at the end, there's a cheat sheet that says, pick these settings for this, and then,
That's what I need.
And then, like I say, in the end, just hit the record button and point your camera at something interesting.
Yeah.
That's how I started. I saw some leaves falling off some trees, and I hit the record button, and that.
Thanks a lot.
Good job.
Thanks a lot, Jim.
All right. Well then, we'll
When do you want to do the next one?
well, and let's say that's the next one I'm going to put together is editing, which is okay. Yeah, you've got all these clips. Okay, how do I put them together? How do I make these transitions? How do I cut and splice? How do I add music to it? That's going to be the next one.
Oh,
Yay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to see if I can find the record option and stop recording.
They keep moving things around.